Ladies and gentlemen, thank all of you for being here this afternoon. We have sort of a mixed bag today of citizen, COPs and all kinds of issues, public hearings, workshops. And to start this off, before we move into the actual work of the issues, I'd like to ask Martin to lead us in the understanding of what we're doing tonight and some of the issues and things we need to be aware of.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we have a joint public hearing, a joint special meeting, and a joint public workshop. The first will be the joint public hearing, which will have a call to order, and roll call and introduction of agenda and format of the hearing. For each of those items, this will be how the format will go. There will be a staff report, then an applicant presentation, and then public comments in either support or opposition to. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record, be brief and to the point within a 3-minute time frame, and then complete a speaker's card and give it to the recording secretary, holding them up right now. Then council, commission, and staff will have discussion, and then there will be an adjournment for that item. On the agenda for the public hearing are 2 items, the Rice Dryer Commerce Park, which was having an amendment to that plan development, and then the Kingsley at Broadway plan development amendment for another development. If you are here for the French Quarter, that item was pulled by the applicant and will be moved to the next month's agenda. For the joint special meeting, it'll have a very similar call for each item, discussion, and so on and so forth. At that meeting, the City Council will then hold a vote to either approve the request as presented, approve with conditions, deny the request, or table the item. And at the joint special meeting, there's one item tonight. It is for 2515 Miller Ranch Road. This is for a church within a residential zoning district. Afterwards, we will have a workshop. At that workshop, there will be a call to order, then the applicant presentation, staff's report, council, commission, and staff discussion, and then an adjournment. That is for a proposed mixed-use residential and commercial project called Carrington Towers. And with that said, we will move into the joint public hearing and start off with number 3.
For the purpose of all of you here in the sequence, we have pulled the workshop, and we'll put the workshop at the end of the 3 other action items we have. So just be aware of that as we go through the process. We figured it'd take a little longer to talk about the workshops than it does to handle the normal joint public hearing. Let me open a joint public hearing, City Council, City of Pearland, for Monday, March 18th, year 2019. I'd like for the chairman of the Planning Commission to read the purpose of our hearing today.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request by Presidio Equities LLC, applicant and owner, for approval of an amendment to the Rice Dryer Commerce Park Planned Development District regulations regarding a minimum building size on approximately 22.86 acres of land. This is at the southwest corner of North Main and Rice Dryer Road.
Okay, thank you. Moving to item number 2 on our agenda, application information case summary, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council and the commission. Good evening. This is a request for approval of an amendment to the Rice Dryer Commerce Park Planned Development District regulations to lower the minimum building size from 5,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. The minimum 5,000 square feet standard was a number that was established with the original PD. And this PD amendment is triggered by an applicant who wants to develop a 3,000 square foot building at the northern portion of the PD for plumbing business. The rest of the PD regulations will not change as a result of this amendment and will remain in full force and effect. Subject property was rezoned in 2018 from light industrial to planned development, which comprised a series of vacant tracts along the west side of Main Street, State Highway 35, and south of Halleck Road, and comprising approximately 23 acres of land. Staff has not received any correspondence from the public regarding this request. The subject property is surrounded by mainly commercial and residential uses, and the subject property was designated on the future land use plan as industrial. This slide here presents a summary of the conformity, the code conformity table. The proposed amendment conforms to the policies of the comprehensive plan, the future land use plan, and the thoroughfare plan. And this last slide here shows the criteria for approval, how the proposed amendment would meet the criteria for approval. And the request was reviewed by the Development Review Committee, and there were no major issues. That concludes staff report. That concludes the staff report.
It completes the report. All right. Moving in our agenda to application presentation. The applicant here tonight, please come down to the podium. And thank you for being here. Remember, we request that you give your name and address and try to confine your remarks. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is David White, as the applicant on behalf of Tetra Surveys and the owners Presidio Equities. Address 3907 Chestnut Bend. And this evening, I'm here to take questions about the proposed amendment to the development. Originally, it was a number polled between the developers and the planning department, just threw out the arbitrary number of 5,000 square feet. Then through negotiations, and one of the owners for the plumbing business, they would like to build a 3,000 square foot building. Thus, our proposed amendment.
Good. I appreciate that. But I will say I missed it out of the silos.
Yes.
I know they're about to fall down. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. We'll probably call you for comments if you want to sit down here instead of going back to your chair. That's maybe save you a trip back and forth, and then you go back after the issue's over. Moving in our agenda also, that was the applicant's make a presentation. Staff wrap up any comments at this point? No staff wrap up, so okay. Moving in our agenda to item number 3. Person wishing to speak for or against the proposed request. I'll ask Councilmember Perez to conduct that process.
Thank you, Mayor. I've not received any notification of anybody that wants to speak on this prior to the meeting. But at this point, is there anybody in the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the plan development? Anybody in the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the plan development? Third and final time. Anybody in the audience like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the plan development? No takers, Mayor.
Okay. That information handled appropriately. Moving to item number 4, which we'll have the Council, Planning Commission, and staff discuss this item. Starting with the City Council. Councilmember Carbone.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilman Reed.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilman Perez.
Mayor, just for the purposes of the public record, I do have an existing business relationship with the consultant that worked on this, Method Architects. But beyond that, I have no comments.
Okay. Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments tonight.
Councilmember Little. Councilmember Moore.
No comment, Mayor.
And Councilmember Owens.
The only thing I guess on this, and correct me, I think this only applies to that one building there. It doesn't affect the balance of the work to be done out there on the size. Still say it's 5,000.
Right. It would primarily affect that one building. The designs for the rest of the buildings are, for the most part, set.
Okay.
Okay. That information in the record. Let's move down to item 4, Planning Commission. Mr. Chairman.
Commissioners? Mayor, there's no comments.
No comments. Moving in our agenda to item number 5. You'll be glad to hear this. I'm adjourning this item at 6:45. And hereby also opening the next item on our agenda, which is joint public hearing. Mr. Chairman, would you place this on the council?
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request of Stephen Hextel, BROP LLC, applicant on behalf of Pine and So, representing Beltway 23 Ltd, owner, for the approval of amendment to the Kingsley and Broadway Plan Development District on approximately 9.2 acres of land. This is at 3100 block of Kingsley Drive.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving in our agenda to application information summary, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for approval of amendment to the design plan of the Kingsley and Broadway Plan Development to accommodate the development of professional office condominiums consisting of single-story buildings totaling approximately 100,000 square feet on the southern portion of the district. Staff has determined that the proposed development deviates from the approved design plan of the original PD and that a PD amendment must be approved. The intent of the original PD was to allow flexibility of uses within the commercial, retail, and office land uses within the project. The rest of the PD regulations will not change as a result of this amendment and will remain in full force and effect. The original PD was approved in 2012 and included a convenience store with a gas station at the corner and 2 pad sites fronting on Broadway Street. I'm just trying to put this back on the screen here. So again, the original PD was approved in 2012 and included a convenience store with a gas station at the corner and 2 pad sites fronting on Broadway Street, designated for retail office development. The gas station and one of the pad sites has already been developed, and the other pad site is currently under construction. Staff has not received any correspondence from the public regarding this request. The subject property is surrounded by single-family residential uses from the east, west, and the south side. The subject property is designated as low-density residential and minor retail node on the future land use plan. And this slide here shows a summary of the code conformity. The proposed amendment conforms to the Unified Development Code as well as the Thoroughfare Plan, but it's inconsistent with the future land use plan. As I mentioned, it was designated as low-density residential and a major node. This slide here shows how the proposed change or the amendment meet the criteria for approval. And the request was reviewed by the Development Review Committee and the staff. There was any major issues with this amendment. That concludes the staff report.
Okay, thank you. Moving on our agenda to item B, is the applicant here to please come down, the podium's yours. Looks like a tag team here. Okay. Give us your name and address and focus on the time frame.
Good evening, committee. My name is Stephen Hextel. I represent BPOC LLC, also the parent company of SHB Development. We do office condominium developments throughout the greater Houston area. This would be our 12th one since 2010 in the greater Houston area, so we look forward to working with the city of Pearland on this one. We build office condominiums. Mainly the buildings themselves run 5,000 to 6,000 square feet. They're divided into 1,225 square feet individual offices, which we make available for sale, due for lease. These are designed for small entrepreneurs, tax accountants, attorneys, those type of people that they're either people that live in the neighborhood that want to be close to their office, and or people that want to have a business that serves residential neighborhoods, accountants, those types of people. We've been very successful with this concept, like I said, throughout the Houston area. We think Pearland is a wonderful opportunity for us to come in. The residential area, the growth, all serves our business model for serving this group.
Okay,
Questions?
good. I appreciate those.
Thank you.
Moving in our agenda, item C, which is staff wrap-up on this. Any wrap-up comments from staff?
No, sir.
Okay. Moving in our agenda, persons wishing to speak for or against, Councilman Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Any members of the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the plan development? Any members of the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed change to the plan development? Third and final time, any members of the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed plan development? No contestants, Mayor.
All right. Moving further in our agenda, we have the council, planning commission, and the staff make their appropriate comments. Moving in the council portion, Councilmember Owens, any comments on this particular item?
Not right now, Mayor.
Councilmember Moore,
Not this time, Mayor.
Councilmember Little.
Thank you, Mayor. I have no problem with it. I think it's an improvement over a gas station convenience store to put office condominiums in there, so good luck.
Councilmember Hernandez.
No comments tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just like to say, it looks like a quality development. No objections, no comments.
Councilmember Reed.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a great addition to that area. Specifically, there's not a lot of office space over there. There's a lot of medical office space, but a lot of those buildings are very restrictive to medical only. So to have something else for other professions to actually enjoy from an office standpoint, I think it's a great addition. So good luck with your project.
Councilmember Carbone. No comments. Okay. Moving in our agenda, something that we'd
Mayor.
like to hear.
Only one thing I was wanting to find out is the lighting on that facility, since it backs up to houses. Is there any concern with that, or?
Photometrics.
Marty Como, architect of record. We plan to use low cutoff lighting, sensitive to dark sky initiatives. None of our light poles will be higher than 24 feet. We provide the minimum parking lot lighting for office requirements. We don't overlight anything. There won't be any glaring lights on the back of these buildings facing the neighborhoods. We're sensitive to that.
Member Owens, you want to add amendment to or a condition on the PD to ensure that?
Yeah.
So like no more than 1 foot candle at the property line?
I think that would be good. That was my concern with it, is the height, and I'm sure the screening in the back cover, but you're talking about 24 feet, you say, on the standards?
I don't believe we've ever put them any higher than 24 feet, and that's in the parking area, nowhere near the back of the buildings. That would be facing the residentials.
So you just have a low light on the building itself in the back.
Occasionally, we put wall packs on the back. They'd be at window head height. They're not designed to illuminate anything more than perhaps emergency egress.
Okay, so that's what you're planning to put on the back?
Possibly, at most. No light poles in the back.
Any other comment from council at this point? Staff have any wrap-up comments?
Mayor, before we move forward,
Oh, I'm sorry.
Member Owens, do you want to put a limitation of no more than 1 foot candle at the property line on the PD, just to ensure that commitment is made?
I think that would be good. Be able
Could
to do that.
we
I
add that?
could interject and say that we're at a joint public hearing. That's something that the planning and zoning can do with their recommendation to you. And then when it comes back for first and second reading, if it's not there, you can have that amendment at that time.
Okay, thank you.
That means it's not over yet. Appreciate you, thank you. Any other comment from council at this point? Hearing none, I move to item 5, which adjourn this particular process on planning and zoning needs to talk to this place.
Yeah, let's,
Council to complete their comments, planning and zoning.
anybody? Laney? Mary? No comments, Mayor.
No comments, okay. And the staff wrap-up comments, okay?
No more comments.
All right, good. I'll move to item 5, which will let me adjourn this particular piece of legislation, which is joint public hearing. Moving in my agenda packet here, we move to a planning and zoning joint special meeting, which I shall open at 6:55, as we move to a planning and zoning commission, city council joint public meeting. Call to order, and this one requires a little bit different procedures than what we usually do with some of the others. We have a roll call. Our city council is here in its entirety, and I'll ask the chairman of the planning commission if you're announced.
Thank you, Mayor. Let the record show Troy Prati is not present. All other
One absent,
commissioners
okay.
are.
All right. Moving to joint public meeting, and would you, Mr. Chairman, read this into the record?
Thank you. This is conditional use permit application number CUP 19-00002. This is a request of Raymond Zoe, applicant on behalf of the Houston Chinese Church, owner, for approval of a conditional use permit CUP to allow for a church campus to be located in a single-family residential R1 zoning district on approximately 5 acres of land. This is at 2515 Miller Ranch Road.
Okay. That information in the record. Let's move then to item A in our agenda. Application information case summary, staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request for approval of a conditional use permit to allow the development of a church on approximately 5 acres of land within the single-family residential district, R1. The subject property is currently undeveloped, and the applicant proposes to develop the church campus in 3 phases. Conditional use permits for this church were approved in 2013 and 2017, but they all have expired before a permit was actually issued for it. So this is kind of a request for reapproval of that previous conditional use permit. Staff has received 1 letter of opposition to this request concerning traffic and parking overflow to the neighborhood streets, and I think it has already been passed to the commission and the city council, that letter. Subject property is designated on the future land use plan as medium residential density. And as mentioned, the subject property is located on 2515 Miller Ranch Road. The subject property is surrounded by residential uses from all sides. And this is the slide on the screen. Is a zoning and aerial map showing the zoning of the property, a single-family residential district. This slide here shows the future land use plan as medium-density residential. And this slide here is the site plan for the proposed church development with the proposed 3 phases in different colors. And this slide here shows a summary of the proposed use conformity to the city codes, including comprehensive plan, thoroughfare plan, UDC. The property is platted and also has access to city utilities. And this is the criteria for approval. It seems like it meets all the criteria for approval. Again, the request was reviewed by the Development Review Committee, and there was no any major issues or objections. Again, this is reapproval of a CUP that has already been granted before. Staff recommends approval of the request as presented, and that concludes the staff report.
Okay, I appreciate that. Moving in our application information case of Summer Hunt, is the applicant here tonight for this particular item? Please come down, the podium's yours. Would you present it and give us your name and address and confine your remarks as appropriate?
Sure.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Charles Cho. I'm a member of Houston Chinese Church, and the address of Houston Chinese Church I can memorize. I'm sorry. It's on Main Street, close to 16 Loop South, in that vicinity. We have applied CUP for several times, and we were design and make all the proposals and possibly with the budget, and then finally we come up with the budget and the plan. We were planning to send the plan for permit, but then city requires to do a replatting because the drainage and utility concern, and also there is a widen on the Mirage Road requirement. So city asking 25 feet from our land to have easement. So that's delayed our last CUP plan. So now we got everything ready. So as soon as the CUP approval, then we're ready to send our architecture plan to for permit. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Appreciate that. Moving in our agenda to item number 3, person wishing to speak for or against this proposal, Councilman Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there any member of the audience that'd like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Any member of the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? Third and final time, any member of the audience would like to speak either for or against this proposed conditional use permit? No takers, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Moving in our agenda, item number B, Planning and Zoning Council and staff discussion from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Mary?
Mr. Chairman.
Nothing new.
No comments, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. This gives a chance for the Planning Commission and the staff both give input and comments. Moving to item number 2, City Council, starting with Councilmember Carbone.
Thank you, Mayor. So we've got the one letter of opposition. I don't believe we had any opposition the past 2 times, and I'd have a hard time with it being approved twice to not approve it this time, so I'll be in support.
Councilmember Reed.
No comment, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just point of clarification on were the conditions that were that are on this CUP, were those the same conditions that were on the previous CUPs that were approved?
Looking over the resolution, I don't see any additional conditions, and in the 2017 ordinance, I don't recall there being any additional conditions other than potentially the site plan. The site plan has changed from this 2017 to what's before you today.
So the 5 conditions that are enumerated under recommendations, those are the same that were approved previously. I'm sorry, they're not conditions. I apologize. They're clarifications. So right now we don't, with respect to the site plan, there's nothing in the site plan that causes us any concerns.
There's nothing that can't be fixed. There's nothing, let me rephrase that. There's no major issues with the site plan.
Okay. So my only comment would be, let's make sure that the site plan is removed from the CUP so that if they have to make any changes in the development process, it doesn't trigger a CUP amendment.
The resolution does not contain the site plan.
Thank you.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question about the part where it says the applicant is proposing a 30-foot buffer with screening being achieved through vegetation as opposed to fencing. Is there, just from a staff perspective, is there one better than the other, or is there a specific type of vegetation other than just kind of what's shown here? Are there any conditions that maybe you would recommend that we put on this for that vegetation? Or
I think for a church, I think it will be more appropriate to go with the vegetation as opposed to building a screening wall, because that would allow the church basically to be open and be visible to the neighborhood as opposed to being just a brick wall or masonry wall or something like that. So from that standpoint, I think a vegetative screen would be more appropriate for a church.
And I guess there's already requirements in place that I guess lay forth which types of plant life are acceptable and whatnot. So.
Correct. Chapter 4 discusses that requirement.
Fantastic. Thank you. That's all.
Councilmember Little? No comment. Councilmember?
No, Mayor, I'll be in favor of this.
Okay, and Councilmember Owens?
I don't have a problem with it. This goes back for several years, I think, doing that. And I got a call from Daniel Wong about the number of residents that live here in the Pearland area and the need for this church. So I was supportive of it then, and I'll be supportive now.
That completes your comments?
Yes, sir.
Any further comments from council? Let's move it to item 3, staff wrap-up comments.
No wrap-up comments, Mayor.
Okay. This is now moved to item C. This now morphs from a item to a councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action resolution number R 2019-CUP19-00002. So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a resolution 2019 CUP 19-00002. Councilmember. Okay, let me start with Councilmember Bowman, Martin, Councilmember Owen, Reed. Approval.
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Perez.
Aye.
Okay, Councilmember Hernandez.
Aye.
Little. Aye. Councilmember.
Aye.
And Councilmember Owen.
Aye.
Good. Mr. Chairman. Huh?
Aye.
I'm sorry. Secretary, we have a motion second on the floor.
Okay, sir. Go ahead and call the roll one more time. Councilmember Hernandez.
Aye.
Councilmember Little. Councilmember Moore.
Aye.
Councilmember Owens.
Aye.
Councilmember Carbone?
Aye.
Councilmember Reed?
Aye.
Councilmember Perez?
Aye.
Motion passed 7-0.
Okay. That information in the record. I moved to item 5, which will let me adjourn this particular series of discussions and decisions at 7:10. We will be moving at this point to a strategic planning workshop. And want to take just a brief recess because I think we're about 3 minutes. If you need to get some water and stuff, we're going into the our Carrington Towers decision-making process. Ladies and gentlemen, let's come back to session and address our last issue today. This is a strategic planning workshop, and I'll call to order by council and by planning commission. The city council is present in its entirety. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor. We have one absence, Troy Pradia.
Okay.
And Mary had to step out. Mary
Okay. We're complete from the council and planning commission. Purpose of the workshop, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mayor, the purpose of the workshop, this is a request of Carrington Towers LLC, represented by Bob Lewis, applicant on behalf of F. Carrington Weems, owner, for a joint workshop regarding a proposed planned development known as Carrington Towers, a proposed mixed-use development with residential and commercial uses on approximately 9.3704 acres of land located on the west side of Business Center Drive, south of Pearland Town Center, and east of Southgate Subdivision.
Okay, thank you, sir. Moving in our agenda to next item is staff report.
Applicant presentation is actually going to be ahead for this one, Mayor.
Okay. Moving to the applicant presentation. Oh, there you are. I didn't know whether you were ready or not. Thank you for being here. If you'll present it, and I think you have a video to present as well. Very good. Thank you, sir. Proceed.
Mayor, City Council members, employees of the city, Planning and Zoning Commission, those in the audience, we're happy to be here and thank you for this opportunity. And I'm going to cover a little bit about what we've learned recently in proposing the Carrington Towers. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit of background about Bob Lewis. A lot of you know him. He's been here 30 years. He's going to come up and make the detailed presentation. Feel free to ask any questions, interruptions, whatever you'd like to say. And I had the recent opportunity to visit quite a few of the high-rise and mid-rise condo developments in and around the Houston area. And invariably, we got to the point of what location are we proposing. And without a doubt, all the people that I talked to, I told them where our location was in Pearland, and every one of them said that's going to be very successful, and we think your time has come to do that. So we know we're on the right track, and we hope that you guys agree with us. And I happen to live in Sugar Land, and my partner, Bob, lives here in Pearland. We kind of consider ourselves sister cities. Mayor, do you know Jimmy Thompson, who's the ex-mayor of Sugar Land?
We do know him, yes.
He's a friend of mine, and he was involved. He and I did some development there, but on the town center in Sugar Land, we had some condominiums that were built there, and they sold out almost immediately after it was built. And I'm happy to say that I have a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law who's a taxpayer, owns a business on Broadway, and I have a son who's the chief operating officer of a chain of restaurants that we're trying to get him to move into Carrington Towers. So we're happy to be here, and we think it's going to be a very good success. If you look at the location where Carrington Towers is proposed, you draw a circle for about 30 miles. You could almost be on the beach. You could be past Sugar Land. You can be almost to the North Airport. You can be out of town heading towards Beaumont. So we think that it's an excellent location, and indeed, our time has come. And I would like to introduce you and tell you a little bit about Bob Lewis. And Bob and I were past business partners in Houston years ago, and I know he's a man of integrity and impeccable taste and a lot of business opportunity. When he moved here 30 years ago, you had 18,000 people. In Sugar Land, we had 25,000. Today, what do you have, Mayor? Maybe 130,000? Is that close? So we've grown quite a bit. And Bob has been in the real estate business for about 20 years. The Pearland Economic Development Council Corporation, Bob's one of the founding members of that. They've been an excellent asset to this community. And he's also developed quite a few properties around town. And by the way, he was also a pillar investor, or I guess he gave money to the YMCA. Everybody know what a pillar investor is? It means the pillar of the corner of the building. So he was one of the original people helped build the YMCA. As you drive up and down the street, you can see Lowe's, Kroger, a couple of shopping centers, and he's had his hands in all those. He loves this community. He only wants what's best for this community. We think that at the conclusion of this presentation, you'll agree with us. And he's also past president of the Rotary Exchange Club and a lifetime member of the Gideons. And at this time, I would like to introduce my friend and business partner to tell you. Do you have any questions with me, by the way? Okay.
Sir, if you could do us a favor, would you please identify yourself for the purposes of our record?
My name is Dale Ladnier. I'm the Business Development Manager for Carrington Towers. That's Ladnier. Ladnier if you're from Louisiana. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Remember to give us your name and address, please.
You bet. Thank you, Dale. I'm Bob Lewis, 30-year resident of Pearland. I live at 2236 Galveston Avenue, Pearland, Texas, 77581. And thank you, Dale, for that presentation. And thank you, gentlemen and ladies, for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation. I can figure out where the little thing is here. Many of you probably don't know about the fact that, is it showing?
You need some help on that?
Well, I pushed the button, it's not, there you go. Okay. Many of you probably didn't know it's already been built, and we're trying to kind of assume that we're going to get to do this, but that's, I'm joking, but that's basically what the building will look like, with two 12-story condominium towers holding 157 units in each one, and then a 4-story retail professional building in front of it with retail on the first story, and the professional building. Let me kill that thing right there. The 3 stories of professional offices will be on top, about 66 of them. Let me try and find the next location here, what I'm going to be trying to show. Here we go. Let's see if that'll pop up. That's kind of small to read, but this is basically kind of the history of what brought us to this point. Back in 2015, I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, and after that meeting, I was talking with some people, and they felt that Pearland, even at that point, 4 years ago, was ready to have some high-rise condominiums, and did some research on it, and found some investors in Mexico that had just finished a 29-story high-rise in the middle of Monterey. And they were ready. They liked this location also. This is 4 years ago now. They liked the location, and we're going to put up the money to pay for the land and the building. And the price of oil dropped to $29 a barrel. So that kind of killed that. So we waited until last year, and some things started coming together. For example, the toll road started getting built. Of course, Pearland Town Center was within walking distance of the location we were looking at, and we chose to, we did a demographic study and found that the timing would be perfect to have that done. Now I wanted to go through the presentation that this is it, yeah. Now, if I can make this thing move right. There you go. This is just a briefing of, pretty similar to what we gave to the pre-development people. Project overview, you can kind of read that and print it out. Basically, it's going to be a, like I say, the two 12-story condos and the 4-story building in front, and then a 2-story clubhouse in the middle. That kind of tells the history of the fact that it started kind of 4 years ago. That's an aerial shot showing where the toll road is going to be, of course, and Pearland Town Center in relationship to where the development is going to be. These are some distances, like Dale mentioned, how far things would be from where this location, this project would be located. Pearland Town Center, it's about 80 shops there that these people will be able to shop at. Of course, Costco is down the street also. Let's see, this is another shopping area. Condominiums need to be around places where people can shop a lot. A lot of hospitals around being built now. This is our primary target, would be the empty nesters and baby boomers and young professionals. Like Dale said, we think the velocity is going to be enormous on this. They're going to fill up as soon as we turn the realtors loose. Some benefits of condo living versus living in a home. That's the map location of where it is in relation to Houston. Putting it in project, that's the total land area, the gross floor area, and all those numbers. 4 buildings, 314 residential units, 11 retail on the first floor, with 2 drive-throughs, one on each end, and then the 66 professional units on top. These are some of the amenity features that we'll have. That's a view from looking from the east at the retail location in front and the 2 towers in back, and the entertainment center in the middle. Another view. Different things that our architect has done for us. And then here is the pool. The pool will be on top of the 2-story clubhouse. Few views of that. There's another top view. That's a site plan showing the north tower on the top, south tower on the bottom, retail on the right, which will be on the east side, because that's Business Center Drive coming down here on the right side. And then other amenities in the back. That's a floor plan on floors 3 through 11. It's a 12-story unit. The first 2 stories will be parking for the residents and for the commercial people that own those, that are leasing those businesses. And then here's the top floor. The reason it's 4 on the top is it's a total of 2.5 floors of garages, so that kind of changes things on the top. That's 1 3-bedroom and 2 2-bedrooms on the top on this tower. And this tells what the Carrington Towers is to us, what it is, where it is, when it is, how it is, and why we feel it needs to be built. This shows that Pearland is, in fact, the 3rd fastest growing city in the country, with Fort Myers and Midland being the only 2 cities growing faster than we are. Here's the gentleman that owns the land. He was also instrumental in Shadow Creek. The Collins brothers out of Vegas came to Pearland about 20 years ago, and they liked the area on the west side of 288, and he got Carrington and his staff to get 150 landowners together to agree on a price. And they were able to purchase the 3,300 acres there, and then they developed it and brought in about six different builders under what we called a TERS back then, and it got changed a little bit. That's some more information on him. He's bought and sold every building in downtown Houston. And so concluding, just want to thank y'all for having us the opportunity here. We feel the timing is just perfect. We feel this will truly put Pearland on the map. One of the things in the application asks, what kind of taxes are we getting from this land right now? And that's about $27,000. When this building goes up, the total taxing will be $5 million. So another interesting thing we found out in our research is something to do, and all of you know more about it than I do, the ETJ and the state of Texas, they're kind of restricting us on that now, because if your city has if any part of your city is in a county that has 500,000 people, then you really can't touch your ETJ. So we really need to be going vertical. And that's all I have. Thank you for your time. Any questions?
We don't have a question and answer at this time.
We don't. Okay.
I appreciate your time and comments on that.
You bet.
Moving in our agenda to our staff report.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. So as you can see, the property that they are looking to develop on is zoned Business Park 288. That lies within the BP or the 288 Gateway, which is primarily for commercial office parks, campuses, large-scale developments. And one of the comprehensive plan goals is to have vertical residential incorporated to it. So parts of this project fit wonderfully within what the comprehensive plan is trying to develop within 288's corridor. This is an aerial image of the site, and then this is the top-down view of the site plan that they are looking to develop. So from a code conformance standpoint, this has kind of a mixed bag on whether or not it meets the comprehensive plan and future land use. Again, it meets for the residential incorporation, but at one point, part of the discussion needs to be about density and how much density is allowed, and whether or not that density number is appropriate for that area. Business Center Drive is sufficient, so the thoroughfare plan would be correct there. One issue, though, is about access, and we'll discuss that in a future slide. For the Unified Development Code, their proposed parking numbers are off by about 120 spaces currently. The building height for BP 288 discusses about a 65-foot height limit. They are proposing to increase that to about 180-foot maximum. And then there's no details on detention or lighting within the land development packet. So if this came forward, we'd want to know some more information about those details. The property has not been platted yet, but of course that will be a step that they go forward with should the project continue. And then the property could currently be served by the existing water and sanitary sewer lines that are out there on the site. So as I mentioned, there are two areas that we're going to discuss in further detail. One is the deviations that are listed within the plan development document, and the second is the overall scale of the project. There are two major deviations listed within the proposed plan development. One is the building height, and the other is the residential aspect. BP 288 currently does not allow for multifamily or any residential type, which is humorous when you think that you have the comprehensive plan that wants it to be, with some residential quality to it, but the code just doesn't allow for that currently. So by deviating that, we're actually allowing a residential product to come into that zoning district through the adoption of a plan development. There are a number of other deviations that aren't listed, but are either portions of the Unified Development Code that would be adhered to or just discussion points. As I mentioned, without having a residential density requirement for BP 288, it's kind of like multiplying by zero. So part of the discussion needs to be about what is an appropriate density for this type of product. As a national average, we see between 20 and 40 units per acre. Secondly, the allowed uses create a bit of an issue by saying that it allows office, professional, neighborhood services, general business, and BP 288. As you're well aware, there are a number of different uses which could potentially be included or not included or require a conditional use permit in a variety of those zoning districts. And should one of those uses come in and ask for approval, and one zoning district says that it requires a conditional use permit, while it's completely not allowed within another district, it could present issues for staff at that time administering this code. Thirdly, landscaping. There are several issues with parking coverage and the initial front landscape setback that are not being met. As I mentioned, the parking count is significantly reduced. And as I said, should this come forward, we would look for some sort of note or explanation as to the amenitization of the detention pond and any site lighting issues. So to discuss scale and give you a better feel for the area, we actually shot this image from one of our drones at about 100 foot high. So you're looking at about a 9th, 10th story view from across the street looking at that property. As you can see, primarily everything is low density and a low maximum ceiling height. So this is part of the facade details that were provided in the applicant's packet. As you can see, basically everything starts at 4 stories tall and then grows from there. This image was also a part of their packet, and many of those trees aren't there. So it's a little deceiving with the scale of the project, but it's an artistic rendering, so I'm not going to hazard it too much. Some of the issues are access points, which we have the access points already established along Business Center Drive. And as you can see, they are proposing 2 points, which you remember from the aerial image. Those 2 points would be on opposite ends of the property, and they would not line up with our access as it exists today. And as I mentioned, drainage, landscaping, and parking would be issues that would potentially bring change about this design plan. And I will leave this image as the last for discussion about scale, as I think the image speaks volumes for the character of that area. And that completes staff's report.
That completes your report?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's move then to get some input from our council and the planning commission. this point, I'll ask the chairman of the planning commission to accept, put into the record comments and questions.
Start with Daryl.
You know, I have some concerns about it, just strictly from the standpoint of the height requirements that we've already got in place out there. You know, it's no doubt that it's a quality development that they've come up with and stuff, but we've already put a height requirement that we stuck to throughout the entire city, and this here is going to be it's going to be towering above everything else. So, other than that, that's really the only thing I've got on it. So.
My comments are the same as Daryl's, basically, that it just stands out so much compared to the things around it.
I kind of feel like this is really the way that the city's going to really grow. We're going to be limited with land. I like these kind of developments. I've been a part of some of these all over city of Houston. There's going to be issues with the neighboring properties because you're so tall looking into their backyards. They're going to have concerns about that. But generally, I don't know, I like these kinds of developments. So,
Mr. Wiggers?
Yeah, I think I agree. It's a nice looking development. There's several issues that I think with a development of this size that the city would need to be concerned about. One of my first concerns would be utilities. And I know the staff said that utilities are available, but the demand of water and sewer on a development of this size is going to be tremendous. And I think we need to for sure look at the adequate sizing of water and sewer facilities in the area and you know what that would do. Secondly, it's very close in the back. At least it appears to me to be close to residential area, and with the heights that we're talking about, it will be interesting to see what objections may come forth from residents in the area once this thing hits public hearing stage. So that would be my comments this time.
What is the next high or the highest building in Pearland now? Like in stories, like the one at Pearland Town Center, the lofts or the apartments there. What are the stories there? The ones we can see off in the distance? 5 stories, maybe?
My only comment, I'm impressed with the package. Looks like a very interesting development. I think the height and what the west facade looks like is going to determine what the residents on the west side think of it. But I want to see more. It looks like a good development. I've learned that scale on these presentations is sometimes off, so it looks good so far. I want to see more about what it would look like for real. I think that concludes our comments, Mayor.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Let's move to the city council with Councilmember Carbone as lead off on this.
Thank you, Mayor. Was there any discussion in phasing as to what towers would come in? And when I was doing some research, it looks like there was a proposed west tower as well to make it a 5th structure.
Out of the PD document, I believe the north tower is the first, followed by the commercial building, the 4-story commercial building, then the tower to the south. Don't recall an additional tower.
Okay.
But I'll let the applicant speak to that.
It's in the packet. There's a west tower in one drawing, and then it goes away. It vanishes, like the houses that are behind there.
Well, it's not in the packet. It was published online. I don't know if the mayor wants to ask the applicant to come back up.
Okay, Bob, why don't you come back up?
Thank you, sir. It's in three phases, like you said. The first phase would be the North Tower and the clubhouse, because we have to have the amenities there for people to be motivated to move into those 157 units. The second phase would be the retail professional, and then the third would be the South Tower. Any concerns about density? You know, if just we look at things after we finish the North Tower and the clubhouse and see if there's any impact. These people are going to be, the inner arrival rate of people coming into that condominium off of those condominiums off of Business Center Drive is not going to be that significant. I'd like to ask my architect, with Jackson and Ryan, they just finished a 43-story building downtown called Market Square. And I'd like to ask Jeff Ryan to come up, if he would, and talk and address the issue about inner arrival rates coming into condos. Could you do that, Jeff?
I guess before that, could you answer the question about the West Tower?
Oh, there's no West Tower. Oh, there's a north and south, and then a retail in front of it up against Business Center Drive, and then a clubhouse in the middle is what that is.
Councilman Carbone, look on page 30. Well, they got it put up there now. Never mind.
It's 33. Here's a rendering showing the West Tower.
West Tower? Where? I don't see it.
Sir, if you look. It looks like there's another tower to the west.
Oh, yeah, that was an original. This is the one. What we decided was that was going to be
the mic.
If you could use the microphone, sir. I think for the purpose of the record, Member Carbone was pointing out an exhibit that he found online.
Yeah, that was going to be a parking garage, and we, again, with our studies, we found people aren't going to want to take their groceries from a separate parking lot to their condos, so we put the garages on the bottom of the north and south tower, and no garage on the north side. I'm sorry. Is that okay?
That's great.
Hi, my name is Jeff Ryan from Jackson Ryan Architects. And I think what Bob is alluding to is that we've done a number of studies helped by Walter P. Moore Associates in Houston, which are civil engineers and traffic engineers. And what we've learned in residential buildings of this type is that they behave very differently in their traffic pattern than office buildings, which have peak demands. They have a demand in the morning, they have a midday demand when people go out to lunch, and of course they have a end of the day rush hour, peak hour, which they contribute to the rush hour traffic. Residential buildings, particularly ones that are aimed at our older citizens, people like myself that are sort of empty nesters, their traffic patterns are very different and they don't generate that kind of peaks. In fact, most of the residents would prefer not to go out there in the rush hour. So the traffic pattern, the in and out movement for the residential portion of this is very different than other buildings and don't really contribute to a substantial change in the peak hour traffic that you'd experience on the road. Now, when staff pointed out that the entrance points don't line up with the esplanades, that would be something that I think would have to be addressed. You'd want to make that traffic work well on that street, as well as make it easy for the residents to get in and out, no matter which direction they're coming from. So that's something that you had preliminarily discussed, Bob, with staff over in a pre-development concept, and there looked like there would be some way for the development to help modify those curb cuts to create that access point and eliminate any conflicts there. Okay.
If I could address one other issue P&Z brought up is the neighborhood South Lake. I think it is on the west side. They're not going to want people staring down into their homes, but we've got two alternatives for that. If they feel it's necessary, or you feel it's necessary, we can put very tall palm trees along the back interspersed so that there'd be total blockage, from them being able to see it. Or we could put a very tall water fountain, kind of like Williams Towers has. It would be very good looking back there, an amenity type thing.
So, Bob, you brought up a good point there on there. with residential being behind there and on the west side of that, I guess I worked on one of these with the city of Houston before, and the residents really threw a fit because at the height up there, people could see in their backyard, and people could see them if they had swimming pools, and trying to get a little privacy, and it was almost impossible to do that. And so that was one of the big things that I found on it would be the sight from the residential side and what they're going to be looking at on something like this. And the other side is you're nothing mentioned on the elevators in there. Is there freight elevator plus 2 other elevators that would go into each one of these buildings at that height?
Yes, sir. Jeff, can you mention that?
Well, the elevator into the buildings is still have to be, there's a certain way you design that to make sure your residents have the proper service. But certainly at a minimum, you would have 2 passenger cabs dedicated to just that. And we would prefer, if the economics work out well, to have 2 freights as well. Condominium buildings behave differently than apartment buildings. With apartments, you can experience sort of a turnover that approaches 18% a year. Mm-hmm. So you've got the number of units times 18%, and people are moving in and out, so you have a lot more activity. So the freight elevators become much more important. Whereas condominiums, people tend to stay longer, there's less turnover. But at a minimum, a Class A building would like to have at least 2 passenger elevators for these number of units. And that would create a nice small interval of about 12 to 15 seconds of wait. And then for the freights, just for the convenience and to have an A-class property, you'd want 2 freights. Okay. In case one is occupied all day and you've got 2 move-ins that weekend and so forth. Now, the management of that, you have some ability to control that when people move in and out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was concern with that on there, and to be honest with you, I don't think we got a fire truck that'll reach that height on there.
Well, once you go above the current zoning, which is 65 feet in height, that means the last occupied floor would be less than 65 feet, because that's height would be to the roof.
All right.
Once in most building codes, when you go past 75 feet for the occupied floor, that puts you in what's called the high-rise code. And the high-rise code requires a lot more for firefighting and life safety procedures. It's mandated in the code.
Yeah.
You have to have, this building would be fully sprinkled in any case, even if it wasn't in the high-rise code. But you would have fire command center for the firefighters to control the elevators. You'd have an emergency generator requirement in case there's an outage for whatever reason, not just in an alarm situation. So you have a lot of other things that kick in once you go above 75 feet that the fire marshal would dictate through the application of the code. And your current code is very up to date, so it would mandate all of these things for life safety.
Yeah.
So the firefighters would not be rescuing people from trucks. They still have that ability up to 65 feet. But normally, the rescue occurs using the elevators and smoke-proof stair towers and things like that. And all the stair towers would have live sprinklers in them and standpipes.
Okay. And I guess from looking at this, you would have kind of a patio on each floor for people, and those would be faced in the east and not west?
Well, yes, that's right. Everybody generally wants to have a little outdoor space, and one of the benefits of that is that you have some protected living inside with the balcony handrails, and so you get out, and also it's a good way to wash the windows in your living room for the sliding glass on the balconies and things like that. So, the balcony configurations would be oriented towards the courtyard and the other directions, and not so much towards the residential in the back.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess, and no lighting in the back, right?
Well, site lighting is an important consideration, but what we try and do is never have the light from the parking lot lighting and so forth. We want it to be safe. Generally, that means at least a foot candle to a foot and a half candle, which is what we typically try and achieve. But today's lights, which are LED lights, typically they can be shaped, the beam spread can be shaped so that light doesn't spill onto any other properties. The light is directed to function to light the landscape in the parking lots and the surface area itself. And then the courtyard lighting would be a lot more dramatic. It would come from the pool use and things like that. It would be softer and much more residential. So the idea is that the lighting for the site would be not an impact on either of the sites to the side or to the rear.
Okay. Yeah, my biggest concern is I guess looking in residential backyards, and
That's a
that
concern.
is a
I
big
probably know
concern.
the residential one you referred to, which was on Bissonnet by Buckhead Development. That was a really different situation because it was a very narrow site, and the building itself was right up within 10 feet of those backyards of those existing properties in Southampton.
Yeah.
And that's why the neighborhood was so opposed to it.
Yeah.
In this case, we have the green space, which is shown here, which is going to be part of the detention requirement to satisfy that. But then there's also additional property right away. So the neighborhood here is quite a bit different than the situation you alluded to in Houston, which I think everybody realized was bad. In fact, that particular property caused a change in the ordinance for getting a building permit in Houston, so that you couldn't be that close to residential.
Okay. That was the biggest concern that I
Yeah,
had.
that lot is still sitting there, by the way, even though they did get a building permit eventually with adjustments to the building, but the property still hasn't been developed because of that controversy.
Yeah.
I think this one represents, that building, by the way, was much taller than this. Yeah, it was 29 stories, and it would have cast a lot of shadows on people's houses at different times of the year and different times of the day. So it had a lot more impact. These buildings at the height that's proposed would not have those kind of impacts on the residential to the rear.
Okay. What, on the square footage, I see that some of the rooms are 780 square feet. What kind of price per foot on that? Far as leasing, renting, or buying, or what?
The one bedrooms, Bob is telling me today, the pro forma says they'll start at about 280.
Okay. And are these just rental, lease, or buying?
No, condominium implies these are purchased.
Yeah. Okay.
So there would be a homeowners organization and things like that that would control the maintenance on the property, the landscaping, all those other things that are usually a concern for neighbors that are adjacent or nearby.
Okay. All right.
Councilmember Reed.
Mayor, I'll come back after.
Okay, good.
I've had to.
I'd like to just run through the council, and then each time each council member speaks, it raises a question that we need to address, and we didn't bring it up. Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think it's quality development. I know I've known of Jackson Ryan architecture for a while. I think they do quality development. There's I don't have any particular concerns about the value of the development that is coming in. I just have significant concerns about the location. When we look at what we're proposing, it's a 314 living units, along with 55,000 square foot commercial building. I mean, if we were to presume that to be somewhat equivalent, not exactly equivalent, but somewhat equivalent to a single-family residential development with a commercial leave-out, it's a 120-acre development. It would be about the size of Southern Trails next to it, or not Southern Trails, but Southgate next to it, the portion that's within the city. So if we can visualize taking that entire subdivision, squeezing it down from 140 acres to 9 acres, that's essentially what we're modeling here. But you can look at Southgate, the portion that's at the intersection, the northeast intersection of County Road 59 and Kirby. You've got two major thoroughfares, each have an entrance, two entrances on those thoroughfares to facilitate traffic through there. This would have two entrances on one major thoroughfare. I would argue you probably don't have two entrances, not with the design that you have, because it doesn't meet our engineering design criteria manual with respect to spacing to the existing drive that's just south of you. So there's either you're going to concede that you can have one entrance, which is not permitted by code, or you have to share, which you can do, but you're going to have to make some modifications to that existing entrance. So this site plan doesn't particularly work from that perspective. I think from a traffic model and just running a couple of numbers before this meeting, just the residential portion is about 1,600 vehicles per day, roughly, in the range of about 200 peak hour. That's not counting for the commercial. Considering the location, you only have one major thoroughfare. The intersections that would be directly impacted are Business Center and Broadway and Business Center and County Road 59, which are already heavily congested. It wouldn't make sense for us to approve something that maximizes density in areas where, in my opinion, it wouldn't make sense for us to do that in areas where we already have significant traffic overload. The intersection at Broadway and Business Center already has traffic that backs up into the intersection so much that we've had to advertise, don't park in this area. Adding that amount of vehicle traffic into that area would worsen the condition, and there's really not much more we can do. Even if we required you to have appropriate mitigation, which is proportional to your development, it would only worsen the conditions there. Considering the amount of complaints and concerns we have from the people that live there, I just don't feel that we would be responsible by adding a high-density development that would impact these intersections. I have further concerns. I know that you would make attempts to block the visibility from, say, the high-rise into the homes. But you've got a drainage channel to the rear that you're not going to put trees into that drainage channel. That the visibility triangle would still exist to where a lot of those homes, particularly on the east end, you'd be able to stare in their backyards. I think when they built those homes and looked at the residential or looked at the zoning next to them being BP 288, looked what could be there, assuming some of those people did that research when they made those home buying decisions. I think they would feel comfortable that privacy fence that they have on the east side of the property was a privacy fence. This would eliminate that condition for them. I think there wouldn't be a whole lot you would be able to do to actually block people on the 12th story from being able to look into people's backyards. With respect, Mr. Ryan, to your comments about traffic mitigation based on having empty nesters or senior living, I'll be honest with you, there's a project right across the street that's outside of the city limits that is a senior living facility that I'm designing. I've made those same arguments. I know that's a senior living facility, but as those arguments have come to us, I've made the same counter argument, which is we cannot zone for that. We cannot zone for ageism. And I'm positive that y'all wouldn't turn down a sale for somebody in their 30s to say, but we think you're going to leave at 7, so we can't let you buy here. So I think there wouldn't be no way for us to model with security that these people wouldn't be leaving this facility at peak hour. I think the project that you had been alluding to was the Ashby High Rise, which was highly controversial. At the same time, San Felipe Place was being built by Hines, which was consolidating a number of residential units in River Oaks and had some of the same concerns. But if you look at the difference between the projects, or that project and this one, that project having gone up, it was a commercial development, but it was 27 stories, so it would have traffic that mimics similarly what you're proposing here. It had roads on all 4 sides. You have a road on one, and there's no way to cure that. There's no ability to get a road to the rear of you. There's no ability to road to get to the north of you. There's really no cure for that based on this site. So I think in general, I think you've got a quality development. I think it's got a place. It's just not this place. It's just not this location. There's just really no way for you to get a traffic model to work for this density and this location and not negatively impact our citizens who enjoy that area. For that reason, I would just not be supportive of this project.
All right. Hernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. I've got a lot of mixed feelings about this. I think that this type of walkable urbanism stuff is really going to be part of our future, whether we like it or not. I really like these types of situations where you've got places to shop and eat and work and stuff and live all in the same spot. I do have concerns with the looking over to the back neighborhood there and being able to see, but I don't know if there's creative ways that you can come up to try to address that. But as far as the traffic stuff, I also have traffic concerns, but maybe I'm, I don't know, this is just anecdotal. I've got friends in Houston that live in these types of developments, and they're in their early mid-30s, and a lot of them work from home. They have irregular work patterns. They're not really leaving early in the morning, and I think that's kind of the future of commerce anyway. You've got a lot of people working from home, and I don't know that I see them, conforming to traditional traffic patterns and things like that. So maybe I don't have as much of a concern, but I still do have a concern. I maybe just need to find out a little bit more information. That area is incredibly congested. So, I mean, I like the concept. Maybe I'm not 100% convinced that this is the right location for it, but I do like the concept. I wish maybe it was in a different area, but I'm not completely opposed to it. I know you mentioned maybe a waterfall or trees or something in the back, but again, I think just the sheer height none of those things would really stop anybody from looking over into somebody's backyard. And if I was a homeowner living there, I would certainly have an issue, with that. Not saying that your tower would be full of creepy people, but you just never know. But I do like this a lot. I like what you said you did with the parking garages as well. I think all of that is very well thought out. I just have to put more effort into looking at the traffic issues and things like that. I mean, they're real valid concerns, I think, but the rest of it I think is pretty cool. The price of the units seems pretty steep, but I think, again, that kind of goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, that the people that would be paying $220,000 for a one-bedroom condo, I think typically probably have more flexible type working situations, things like that. So, I mean, I don't know. I'd have to do more research into it. But anyway, thanks for coming tonight.
I think it was 280, not 220.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry.
Yeah, you might get them on sale, but
Thank you, Mayor. Like Councilman Hernandez, I really like the concept. I think it's the way of the future. But as Councilman Perez noted, I think the traffic impact is going to be very negative for this area. We've already gotten half a dozen comments from citizens on this project, and they were all negative. Their primary concerns were additional traffic generated by it, the devaluation of their property because of multi-unit housing bringing in crime. But at $276 a square foot, I don't think we're going to see a lot of increase in crime as a result of this development. I do like the concept, but I don't know if the location is right. Before I decide, I'd like to see some kind of traffic impact study on what this might do. That's where I am, but thanks for your presentation.
Councilmember Moore?
Thank you, Mayor. There are a lot of issues, and I'm not going to rehash some of what was already said, but I've vehemently been against any kind of multi-dwelling, especially on the west side of the city. I wasn't for the Ivy District, and I can't be for this either.
Okay. Let me make a couple of comments, and that is, Pearland is growing really fast, and the quality of the city is such that we're attracting a lot of people to come here because of what we are. This is a new concept where we understand homes, we understand office buildings, we understand hotels, retail. We understand these because we have those, and we're used to them. this is something we're not used to right now. So we're trying to figure out, is this something that people say, that's Pearland. This is what we need, and this is where it goes. Maybe it's not there, maybe it's somewhere else. But the concept is such, we got to learn about these because this probably not be the last time we'll see something of this type come in. Maybe not a condo, but something with some of these issues that you're talking about here. So I think it's appropriate that we take a look at this and learn it. And this is part of the learning process of the city and our process. So what I'd like to do at this point, this is, we're going through something that's not just a normal workshop. We just call it a strategic planning workshop. And so we're kind of being a little more flexible about some of the things that we have been asked to do. Okay, what I'd like to do at this point now is open it up for individual comments. Have you gone through the process? You found something, I didn't really like that idea. Hey, I like that idea. So let's open it back up for council members and planning commissioners to make further comments before we proceed. Councilman Reed, we'll start with you as an example here.
Thank you, Mayor. So if I lived on, I think it's Harris Drive, Harris Avenue, which backs up to, all the homes back up to that specific area. I mean, I know it was mentioned that it's different from Houston because it was only 10 feet in that situation. But if I lived on Harris Avenue, I'd be upset. That's not the word I want to say. I want to say what I would typically say, but I'd be upset that my city allowed a 12-story building to be built after denying a gas station on the corner of, I guess it was Independence a couple months ago, after denying a grocery store near, I think it was near Shady Crest, but we would allow a 12-story building to be built that overlooks their backyard. It's a nice concept. I've seen a lot of nice concepts, since my days on planning and zoning. And some of those have come into fruition. A lot of them haven't. It's probably going to be a great development, and as has been already said, but somewhere else. The traffic would be horrible right there. I do live in the area. Privacy is a huge issue, and congestion just in general on Business Center Drive and 518, Business Center Drive and County Road 59. My biggest thing though is the value of the property surrounding that general area. Once you build this 12-story building, I mean, if I lived on Harris Drive, I'd be trying to move. And as those that live on Harris Drive move, then more people try to move. They have trouble selling their homes, or they become rent homes, and it's just a trickle down effect. And so, it was mentioned that we're bringing tax dollars to the city. We're going to end up taking tax dollars away. I'm obviously against it. I hope that it does not pass for the reasons that have already been mentioned by many other council members. I'm 100% sure. And I think that's it, Mayor. I guess the next drawing, that's submitted, probably should show the homes that are back here, because all we see is the trees, and there's more than that's really back there. But thanks for your presentation.
I would just say, I think, not speaking for other council members, but what I'm hearing is that you've got a very steep uphill battle at the location that you're at. I think some of us are impressed by your willingness to invest in Pearland with something of this size, this value, this quality. For me, it has to have access to a couple of thoroughfares. There's no way to get traffic out of a development like this without a couple of access points and more than 2 driveways. And it needs to be buffered away from residential. Again, when I see these kind of developments, there is a significant commercial commercial buffer between that, low-rise commercial buffer between this kind of development and residential homes. So I don't know what your plans are moving forward. If you want to try and move and find a location in Pearland that meets those criteria, maybe we can regroup. you're certainly welcome to move forward. Again, not speaking for other council members, I don't see that there's a whole lot of excitement for this location.
Okay. Hernandez?
To not let him speak for me, I will say, yes, that is probably my main concern is I don't think this is the right location for it, but I really admire the concept, and I would like to see something like this come into Pearland, perhaps even with a larger land buy-in to do something even grander than this. So, I mean, that's where I am now. Like I said, I'm not 100% against it, but the concerns are very valid in my head. So I'll continue to mull it over for the time being.
Mm-hmm. There may be other areas of the city that this might be more appropriate. If you consider Councilman Carone.
Mayor, I guess the issues for me, the traffic, if we can solve traffic, I don't think you can, but if you could, screening, you mentioned some pretty tall palm trees or a potential water wall, if you want to go for that. And then phasing, I'd like to see the office and the retail come in, because if you can clear all the other hurdles, I would hate to see just the residential come in without anything else. So those are some pretty high hurdles. If you can clear them, go for it.
Okay. Any other comment from the commission? Yeah.
So, as Director of Traffic Engineering for Walter P. Moore, I've now, since our company name was mentioned, I've kind of gone back through several principles that I work with, and as far as I know right now, I don't have a conflict of interest on this property. I've never seen this layout, so just wanted to clear the air. If we do have a conflict, I will let everybody know.
Any other comments? Mr. Lewis?
If it's a density issue, from an economical standpoint, what if we made the building not be as tall? Can we take a look at that and come back to you and see if it's not as tall? I think that the hospital, I know there's a 5-story building in town, but I don't remember if the hospitals are 6 stories, but there's not as many residential people around it or not. But I would offer that to let me have an opportunity rather than, I don't know what the purpose. Tonight is just a workshop, I thought, but we can work with the staff and council if you want us to see about decreasing the height of the building. There's still, you got to start somewhere, and really, I believe we need to go vertical. Maybe this overdoes it, but what do you think about that?
In my conversations with the people that live in the area, the multifamily or a condo unit that mimics multifamily is going to be a tough sell. The people in that area have a difficult time with multifamily for a number of reasons, not the least of which is traffic. I don't want to assume too much in your pro forma, but in order to be able to get the value back on the investment, I don't think you're going to be able to cut it down to a number where traffic wouldn't be of a significant concern, not just to us and our staff, but to the residents as they see it go up. So, at least what I would hope from the workshop is that you get some guidance. And what I've used, the phrase I've used is, if it's going to be a no, let the no be as cheap as possible. Again, you can't speak for any of the other council members, but I just don't see that type of development in this location of the quality that would make you money being in a condition where I would feel comfortable approving it.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other comments from council on this?
Mayor, I know there's a lot of concerns, but I think, Bob, anytime you can come back and work with it, you've heard the concerns, other than finding a different location, but the height was a big concern on there. So, I mean, if there's other things that you've heard tonight that you could make some kind of improvement so where it wouldn't affect, then, come back, give it a shot with staff.
It could be that maybe this will be a companion to Bass Road. Who knows? I think it's an opportunity for us to learn about new options that will be presented this over time, and I think we have to be able to recognize and be able to address and respond to them. So this has been an opportunity for us to have an experience. And Mr. Chairman, does the Planning Commission have any further comments at this point?
Darrell, you have any other comments?
So,
None at this time, Mayor.
okay. A strategic planning workshop is the first that we've ever conducted in our history in Pearland on a particular spot. And I think the technique of a strategic planning workshop might fit other building and construction options and other plans that people might have for something for Pearland. So this has been an experience, but this is not maybe we're through yet, but does the council have any further comment at this point on this? Okay, so we've been a little more flexible in this particular type of a workshop than we would. A normal workshop would have been through, but I think we need to learn a little bit about this. Pearland is going to grow. Pearland is going to be different in the future. How is it going to be different? How we're going to address it? What are we going to do when it does appear? So this has been a good experience for us. And what I'd like to do now is kick us back to our staff and for any opinions as to where we need to go from this point. And I think you're in the process of reviewing this structure. And so I want to give you the option under this strategic option here at this point. I'll let you do that, Martin.
I think we've heard plenty of comments, and we'll visit back with Bob in the future to see what his team comes up with.
Okay, thank you. Let's see the commission or council members have another comment. I will adjourn this very impressive and very option that we've had to look at the future, what could come to Pearland, where it should go, where it could be. So we are adjourned at 8:25.